Forum took place last week in Boston about education over the internet. The event was hosted by the policy group, the Pioneer Institute, a leader in the development of charter schools. The Institute believes online education can give parents and students more options in learning, and steps have been taken to expand that option in Massachusetts. Our guest has been exploring the issue in his work at the Pioneer Institute, where he's director of the Center for School Reform. I'd like to welcome Jamie Gass. Thank you very much for being with us, Jamie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Some people who've taken adult education courses or postgraduate courses in college, they know something about online education, but what are you talking about here primarily?
Well, first let me begin. So Pioneer is, for a long 20 years or so, been big advocates for school choice, a variety of different mechanisms, METCO, voc tech schools, charter schools, etc. And we see virtual learning, digital learning, as part of that portfolio of options. But what online learning really is about is creating mechanisms for a variety of different students, whether it's very high-performing students or low-performing students or students with medical needs or dropouts, another option to help them complete high school.
Talk about other states where we've seen more of this.
Right.
What's been going on there?
So Massachusetts does have a virtual component to its ed reform law that it passed a couple of years ago, but we are one of the states that are lagging behind in terms of virtual learning. The real leader is Florida. The Florida Virtual School has been around since about 1997. The keynote speaker at our event was Julie Young. She was the founder of that program. They have about 100,000 students that are served in the Florida Virtual School. Other leaders are Michigan, Utah, and others, where they actually have a graduation requirement that a certain number of classes are taken in virtual learning. No, Florida really is the kind of gold standard, and Massachusetts, by contrast, has about 500 students that are enrolled in virtual schooling.
Now, I guess the way this works is that you're not on the classroom clock here, so students can go at their own pace. Is there any sign yet that this has really helped a lot?
There is some early evidence of it. So it's a relatively new mechanism for instruction. It's been around for a little while, but it's really getting wide currency. It's growing at about 25% a year. There's about 200,000 students across the country that are participating in some kind of online learning. It's about 30 states or so. But you know, again, the fact is that it's a new mechanism. They are part of the reason why we're hosting these forums is to kind of work out some of the kinks and have policymakers talk about the variety of options that are necessary to help this be a success.
Well, in a typical high school class in math, let's say, a student might get some homework. A student might have some trouble solving a problem, so the next day you go to school and the teacher helps you figure it out. Now, how do you get that in online learning?
Yeah, so the sort of the motto is that it's, you know, it helps students anytime, anywhere, and so rather than having a classroom that is sort of confined by the bricks and mortars of a regular school day, that students can submit questions anonymously in some instances, which may address some shyness or some learning difficulties, etc. But that part of the contract, for example, that they have with the teachers in the Florida Virtual School is that they're available to students really almost real time. And so that could be late in the evening, could be early in the morning, and it's really designed to accommodate the needs of the students. And so obviously it requires a kind of special abilities of the teachers, but the key really is being able to transmit the academic content, and so the quality of the standards and the academic content in which is being delivered is key. So
you mentioned contracts, of course. Not only do teachers maybe need some specialized training for this, but they might be looking at this as a threat. This will take away jobs, they might be thinking.
I think some folks are thinking that, although we had Kathy Skinner from the Massachusetts Teachers Association on the panel. She has taught some online classes. The one virtual school that we have here in Massachusetts is in Greenfield, and the teachers are all unionized. And so I think the design, certainly of people around this topic, are not to subvert the teachers' union, but to create options that are most appropriate for kids. And if that requires some tweaks in the teachers' contracts, I think that's probably maybe necessary, but it's not really the intent of anyone that I've spoken to and around the digital learning world to interfere with the teachers union.
Now in Florida, I'm sure they have the multicultural challenge as we do in Boston. Can you combine responses to that challenge, making education, let's say, culturally appropriate? Can you do that with an online program?
No, I think you can, and I think that out in Greenfield, for example, they've had a variety of very thorny issues. A lot of the students.
And that's a district-wide online program.
That's
in Massachusetts,
right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of rural poverty in Western Massachusetts. There is not as much demographic diversity, but I think it can, and I think that it requires a high-quality curriculum with a really skillful teacher. In some respects, it's some of the old lessons of regular schooling, but it's just applied to the 21st century.
The Washington Post had a story about this recently, and they said that the test scores coming out of online learning are not really by themselves that impressive, although you might have to allow for the mix of students, making it hard to compare.
Right. No, I think that's true. The early research illustrates that there's incremental improvements among virtual students that are taking classes online or enrolled in virtual schools. But again, I think it's early. It's relatively early. I mean, this is a movement that has begun really, in the last several years in earnest, and there's increasingly a big push, and I think that's illustrated by its inclusion in the Ed Reform Law of 2010.
Of course, one of the local reps in Boston, Marty Walls, was instrumental in that. So what's actually in process right now, going at least in that direction to get more of this in Massachusetts?
So you're right. Representative Walls and Representative Brownsberger have both been very active and interested in this topic. They've been a little bit impatient with the state in terms of implementing the law. They think that it's a good step out in Greenfield, but they would like to see, I think, the kind of progress they've seen in other states, and I think that may require the Department of Education to loosen up some of the regulations, allow this experiment to really flourish.
Well, some of these experiments along the way have had troubles. Any troubles we should try to avoid in Massachusetts?
No, it's an excellent question, and look, Pioneer has been always active in both the school choice movement and the charter school movement, and I think the pitfall to avoid is overpromising. This is not a cure-all. It's not any kind of magic bullet. It is one of a variety of, I think, good options that can help students get to where they need to go academically.
Of course, another challenge with online learning, I think, is also the case with regular learning, but maybe more so here, is how do you make sure that the work is really being done by the student?
Right. No, it's an excellent question. So, and it's one that the panel at our event last week wrestled with. Part of the solution to that is having final exams that are taken in front of the teacher and that are proctored, and so there's a very clear assurance that the work that's been done over the semester is really their work. But it's an excellent question, how to police in cheating and things like that in academic integrity in this era.
We should mention there's a white paper at the Institute, and you've got that on the website?
We do, yep, at pioneerinstitute.org, and it's called Virtual Schools, Actual Learning.
Thank you very much for being with us, Jamie Gass.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
From the Pioneer Institute. We'll have more news in a moment after this message.